My left arm rested on the armrest, still aching after 3 days. The white cast was a constant reminder of the brutality of Megan, my daughter-in-law, from when I told her I had no intention of handing over the $4 million I had won in the lottery. I was sitting in my favorite armchair, the same one where I had watched Theo grow up for so many years, when I heard their voices approaching from the yard. "Beatrice, open the door," Theo shouted, banging hard. His knuckles echoed against the wood like hammer blows. Megan was with him, her heels clicking against the tiles of my entryway. They were coming for the second time this week. The first had been when Megan fractured my arm for refusing to sign the papers they had brought from the bank. Now they were back, and I knew it wasn't a family visit. I rose from the armchair with difficulty, trying to protect my injured arm. At my 69 years, every movement cost me twice as much after the beating. I shuffled towards the door, my heart beating like a drum in my chest. "Theo, son, what do you want now?" I asked through the closed door. I didn't want to open it for them, not after what had happened. "Open up already, you stubborn old woman," Megan roared from the other side. "We've come to talk to you seriously. We're not leaving until you sign those papers." Her voice had that acidity that made my blood run cold. She was the same woman I had met 5 years ago when Theo introduced her to me as his girlfriend. Back then, she had seemed sweet, polite. She had called me Mama Beatrice with such affection that I thought I would finally have a daughter. I opened the door with my right hand, keeping my left arm pressed against my body. Theo entered without waiting for an invitation, pushing me aside. Megan followed him, her eyes gleaming with that greed I already knew so well. They settled in my living room as if it were their own, Theo sinking into my new sofa, the one I had bought with my first retirement check. "Mom, we've come to resolve this once and for all," Theo said without looking me in the eye. He was 32 years old, but in that moment he seemed like a stranger. His voice sounded cold, calculating. "Megan is 5 months pregnant. We need that money to buy the big house, to start the business, to secure your grandchild's future." He said it like it was an order, not a request. "Theo, I already explained to you that I can help you, but I'm not going to hand over all the money," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's $4 million. I also have the right to live with dignity in my final years." I stood by the door, ready to run if necessary. Fear ran through my veins like poison. Megan shot up from the sofa like a coiled spring. "Dignity? What dignity? You've already lived, Beatrice. You've had your chance to be happy, to buy things, to travel. Now it's our turn." She approached me with her fists clenched. "That money doesn't belong to you. An old woman like you doesn't know what to do with so much money. You're just going to waste it on medicine and stupid things." "Megan, please, calm down." I tried to reason with her. "You can have half. $2 million is more than enough to start a new life." But my words only enraged her more. She stood in front of me with her hands on her hips, her pregnant belly jutting out like a threat. "I don't want half. I want all of it," she screamed in my face. Her breath smelled of cigarettes and hatred. "My son is going to grow up in a mansion, he's going to go to the best schools, and you're not going to screw up our plans with your miserable old lady selfishness." She pushed me so hard that I stumbled and fell back into the armchair. The fractured arm moved and I screamed in pain. "Megan, that's enough," I exclaimed through tears. But Theo didn't move from the sofa. He didn't defend me. He just looked at me with contempt, as if I were the problem. "Theo, son, please, control your wife," I begged him. He was my blood, my only son, the boy I had raised alone after his father died when he was 8. "No, Mom. Megan is right," Theo said, getting up slowly. "You don't understand the opportunity you have to do something good for your family. I sacrificed my whole life for you. I worked since I was 16 to help with the bills. I never went on a trip, never had a serious girlfriend until Megan, all because I had to take care of you." His words cut me like knives. "Theo, I never asked you to sacrifice yourself. I worked double shifts so you wouldn't lack anything," I reminded him, my voice breaking. "I sold my car, I pawned my mother's jewelry, I turned down Mr. Morris when he proposed because you said you didn't want a stepfather." Each word came out with pain, remembering all the sacrifices I had made for him. "That was your obligation," Megan roared. "Mothers sacrifice for their children. But children also have the right to receive an inheritance when their parents die or when they're old and useless. She slapped me with her left hand. The sound echoed through the living room. The sting of her fingers burned on my cheek. Theo approached me with a coldness that chilled my blood. "Look, Mom, I'm going to explain this to you one more time. Tomorrow, you're coming with us to the bank and transferring all the money to my account. Everything. Not half, not a part, everything. If you don't, Megan and I will make sure the rest of your life is a living hell." His threat hung in the air like toxic smoke. "I can't do that, Theo. I'm not going to hand over all my money," I replied, trying to sound brave, though inside I was trembling. That's when Megan completely lost control. She grabbed me by the neck with one hand and took my fractured arm with the other. "Then we're going to teach you what happens to stubborn old women who don't understand the easy way." She twisted my arm with such force that the cast shifted and I screamed like a wounded animal. The pain shot through me from my shoulder to the tips of my fingers. "Sign those papers, or next time I'll break your other arm." She let me go and I fell to the floor like a dirty rag. Theo looked down at me, without a hint of compassion in his eyes. "You have until 10 o'clock in the morning tomorrow to decide, Mom. Either you come with us to the bank and sign everything, or Megan and I will make sure you learn things the hard way." They headed for the door as if nothing had happened. "Oh, and Beatrice," Megan shouted from the entrance. "Tomorrow when we go to the bank, you're going to say you're giving us this money out of love for your grandchild. You're going to smile and act like the happy grandmother you should be. Because if you don't, I swear on this child I'm carrying that I will make you suffer until the day you die." The door slammed shut with a thud that shook the whole house. I was left lying on the floor of my own living room, crying like a lost child. My arm throbbed with pain, my cheek burned from the slap, but what hurt the most was my heart. My own son, the reason for my existence for 32 years, had threatened me. He had betrayed me for money. "Tomorrow you're going to find out, my son, that your mother is not as helpless as you think," I muttered through my tears, wiping the blood from my lip with my right hand. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay awake in my bed, staring at the ceiling as tears rolled down my cheeks. My arm throbbed, and every movement reminded me of Megan's cruelty. But more than the physical pain, what broke my soul was remembering how I had gotten here, how my Theo, my adored child, had become this cold man who threatened me for money. I closed my eyes and transported myself 24 years back, when Theo was 8, and his father died in that horrible construction accident. I was left alone with a small child, with no savings, no family to help me. I worked during the day at the textile factory, and at night I cleaned offices. I would get home at 2 in the morning and have to wake up at 6 to make Theo's breakfast and take him to school. I remember that Christmas when he was 10. All his classmates talked about the gifts Santa Claus had brought them. New bikes, video games, brand-name clothes. Theo came home crying because he had only received a second-hand toy car that I had bought at the flea market. "Mom, why didn't Santa bring me what I asked for?" he asked me with those little eyes full of tears. That night, I cried silently while he slept. The next day, I sold my engagement ring, the only valuable memory I had of my husband, and bought him the bicycle he wanted so much. When he saw it, his eyes lit up like 2 stars. "Mom, Santa did remember me," he shouted, hugging me so tight I thought he would break my ribs. That hug was worth more than 1,000 gold rings. For years, it was just him and me, against the world. When he got pneumonia at 12, I stayed up for 3 straight nights taking care of him. When he failed math in high school, I took on 2 extra jobs to pay for private tutors. When he wanted to join the school's soccer team, I spent my savings on the most expensive cleats I could find. "Someday, Mom, when I'm big and have money, I'm going to buy you a big house so you don't have to work so much," he would tell me as I tucked him in at night. At 16, Theo got his first part-time job at an auto parts store. He would come home proud, showing me his first paycheck. "Look, Mom, now I can help with the bills too," he would say, handing me half his salary. I was so proud of him. My hard-working son, my responsible son, the good man he was becoming. When he turned 18, Mr. Morris, the owner of the hardware store where I bought materials for my small weekend plumbing jobs, started courting me. He was a good man, a widower like me, with 2 grown children living in the United States. He would invite me to dinner, bring me flowers, treat me like a queen. For the first time in years, I felt like a woman again, not just a mother. "Beatrice, I'd like to ask you to be my wife," Mr. Morris told me one Sunday afternoon after the church service. He held a simple but beautiful ring in his trembling hands. "I know you have Theo, but he's a man now. We could be happy together, build a family." My heart leaped with joy. After so many years of loneliness, someone was offering me love. But when I got home and told Theo, his reaction made my blood run cold. "How can you think of marrying another man?" he shouted with a fury I had never seen in him. "My dad has only been dead for 10 years. It's disrespectful. That old man just wants to take advantage of you." He cried like he did when he was a child, clinging to my skirt, begging me not to abandon him. "Son, Mr. Morris is a good man. I have a right to be happy too," I tried to explain. But Theo became hysterical. "No, Mom, you promised me we would always be together. If you marry him, I'll leave home and you'll never see me again. Choose between him and me." That ultimatum broke me in two. My son or my happiness. The next day, with a broken heart, I went to the hardware store to find Mr. Morris. "I'm so sorry, but I can't marry you," I said, returning the ring. He looked at me with sadness but with understanding. "It's because of Theo, isn't it?" he whispered. I just nodded, with tears in my eyes. "That boy doesn't understand yet that you have a right to a life too, Beatrice. Someday, he's going to regret taking this chance away from you." The years passed and Theo stayed with me. But something had changed in our relationship. He was no longer the affectionate boy who hugged me. He had become possessive, controlling. He criticized everything I did, from the food I cooked to the clothes I wore. "Mom, you're too old to wear that color lipstick," he would say. "Mom, that skirt looks ridiculous on you at your age." Little by little, without realizing it, I had started to lose my identity. When he met Megan 5 years ago, I thought things would change. Finally, my son would have someone else in his life, and I could get a little freedom back. Megan seemed so sweet at first. "Oh, Mama Beatrice, your cooking is delicious," she would say, tasting my pot roast. "Mama Beatrice, you have to teach me how to make that amazing apple pie." She made me feel useful, needed. But in the first few months after they got married, I noticed subtle changes. Megan started making comments about my house. "Oh, Mom, this living room is so outdated." Theo and I were looking at some more modern decorations in magazines, or about my clothes. "Mom, don't you think it would be good to update your wardrobe? Ladies your age don't wear such bright colors anymore." Theo backed her up on everything. If he used to defend my decisions, now he always agreed with Megan. "Yeah, Mom, Megan's right. You should modernize a little." I tried to please them, to change what they wanted, but it was never enough. There was always something more to criticize, something more to improve. Last year, when I had a heart condition and had to be hospitalized for a week, I thought they would finally show the love they claimed to feel for me. But Theo only visited me twice, always accompanied by Megan, and they never stayed for more than 20 minutes. "We have a lot of work, Mom," he would justify. "You know the business can't be neglected. When I left the hospital, weak and scared, I hoped they would take care of me a little. But Megan told me, 'Mom, we can't be coming over all the time to look after you. You have to learn to stand on your own 2 feet. You're a big girl now. You can't depend on us for everything.'" Her words hurt more than the surgery. That's when I started to realize that something was wrong. My son, the boy for whom I had sacrificed everything, no longer saw me as his mother. He saw me as a burden, as an obstacle on his path to happiness. Megan had achieved what she wanted, to drive Theo away from me, to turn him into her ally against his own mother. But I still clung to the hope that it was all temporary. When they have children, they'll understand what a mother's love is, I would tell myself. When they become parents, they'll value everything I did for them. How naive I was. Megan's pregnancy hadn't softened them. It had made them greedier, crueler. Now, lying in my bed with a broken arm and a shattered heart, I understood that my son was lost forever, that the sweet boy I had raised had died, and in his place was this man who saw me as a source of money. The Theo who hugged me when he had nightmares no longer existed. In his place was a stranger who threatened me and allowed his wife to beat me. "Forgive me, son. I murmured in the darkness. Forgive me for loving you so much that I didn't see what you were becoming. Forgive me for not setting boundaries when I should have. But most of all, forgive me for what I'm going to do tomorrow. At 6 in the morning, I got out of bed without having slept for an hour. My arm hurt horribly, but there was something stronger than physical pain running through my veins. Determination. I went to the kitchen and put water on to boil for my chamomile tea. I needed to think clearly, to plan every move of this day that would change everything forever. While I waited for the water to boil, I took the winning lottery ticket I had bought 5 days ago out of my purse. $20 I had set aside from my pension, the last I had left after paying the electricity and water bills. If I win anything, even $100, I'll buy myself some new arthritis medicine, I had thought as I chose the numbers. The birthday numbers of my late husband, Theo's date of birth, the day we got married. I never imagined those numbers would give me $4 million. When I saw the result on the evening news, I had to sit on the floor from the shock. I checked the ticket 10 times before convincing myself it was real. I cried with joy, thinking about all I could do. A more comfortable house, a trip I had always dreamed of, helping Theo with his future, securing my future grandchild's college education. My first instinct had been to call Theo to share the news. "Son, you're not going to believe what happened," I shouted into the phone that night, almost breathless. "We won the lottery, $4 million. On the other end of the line, there was a strange silence. Then I heard Megan screaming with excitement in the background. "Theo, tell her to come over here right now. We have to celebrate." That same night, they arrived at my house with a bottle of cheap champagne and a smile that I now understand was not of joy, but of greed. "Mom, I can't believe we won so much money," Theo said, hugging me tighter than he had in years. Megan cried with emotion, stroking my hand with a sweetness that seemed strange to me, but which I attributed to the shock of the moment. "Mama Beatrice, you're not going to have to worry about anything ever again," Megan told me as she uncorked the champagne. "With that money, we're all going to be happy. We can buy a big house for the 3 of us, a business for Theo, everything we've ever dreamed of." I listened to her, excited, thinking that we would finally have the united family I had always wanted. But the next morning, when I woke up with a hangover from the champagne, I found Theo and Megan sitting at my kitchen table with papers spread out and calculators. "Good morning, Mom," Theo greeted me without looking up from the numbers he was writing. "Megan and I were up all night doing the math. We've already got everything planned for the money." I poured myself a coffee and sat down with them, curious to hear their ideas. "Look, Mom," Theo showed me a sheet full of numbers. "With $4 million, we can buy that house in Green Hills that costs $1.2 million. Then we invest $2 million in the auto parts business I always wanted to start. And with the remaining $800,000, we set up a savings account for the baby." "And for me?" I asked naively. Megan and Theo looked at each other as if I had said something foolish. "Oh, Mama Beatrice, you're going to live with us in the new house. You'll have your own bedroom, your own bathroom, everything you need. What do you need separate money for?" Megan replied with that fake smile I was beginning to know. "But honey, I want to maintain my independence. Maybe buy myself a small house near you, take care of some health problems I have pending," I explained, trying to sound reasonable. Theo dropped the calculator on the table with a thud. "Mom, don't be selfish. This money is a blessing for the whole family, not just for you." "Theo, I bought the ticket. I won the money. Of course I want to share it with you, but I also have my own plans," I replied, feeling a strange tension in the air. Megan stood up from the table abruptly, her face transforming into a mask of irritation I hadn't seen before. "Beatrice, you don't understand?" Megan exclaimed, in a voice that made my blood run cold. "We're young. We have our whole lives ahead of us. You've already lived your best years. This money is our chance to be happy." Her words hit me like slaps. Theo didn't contradict her. He just nodded his head, supporting every word his wife said. "Look, Mom," Theo took my hand with that fake sweetness he had learned from Megan. "You're already 69 years old. You've enjoyed life, you raised your son, you've fulfilled your purpose. Now it's our turn. Megan is pregnant. We need to secure our son's future. Don't you think that's more important than your old lady whims?" His words cut me like knives. Old lady whims? Was wanting to maintain a little dignity in my final years a whim? Did winning that money with my own $20 not give me the right to decide how to use it? Theo, son, I can give you half. $2 million is more than enough to start a new life. Megan erupted like a volcano. We don't want half. We want everything. My son is going to grow up in a rich family, not waiting for the crumbs his stingy grandmother gives us. She approached me, her eyes gleaming with rage. You've had your chance to be happy. You had your marriage, your son, your house. Now it's my turn to have all that. Megan, please, calm down. I tried to reason with her, but Theo immediately took her side. No, Mom. Megan's right. You don't understand what it means to be starting a family these days. Everything is so expensive. The house, the food, education, healthcare. With $4 million, we can ensure our son has a future without hardship. And what about me? Am I going to live like a beggar in your new house, depending on what you give me? I asked, my voice breaking. Theo's expression hardened in a way that scared me. Mom, you lived your life. You had your house, your marriage, your independence. You raised your son. Now it's time for you to let us live ours. It was in that moment that I understood it had all been an act. The smiles, the hugs, the sweet words from the night before. It had all been a performance to soften me up, to make me hand over my money without resistance. Theo and Megan didn't see me as family. They saw me as an obstacle between them and the $4 million. I'm not signing any papers, I told them, getting up from the table. That money is mine, and I'm going to use it as I see fit. I can help you, but I'm not giving you everything. Megan shot up like a spring, her face contorted with rage. You selfish old woman! After everything we've done for you, everything you've done for me? I repeated in disbelief. When have you ever done anything for me? When I was in the hospital and you only visited me twice. When I needed help carrying groceries and you told me you were too busy. When I turned 69 and you completely forgot my birthday. Theo approached me with a coldness that terrified me. Mom, this isn't a negotiation. Either you give us that money the easy way, or you're going to have to give it to us the hard way. His threat hung in the air like toxic smoke. Megan smiled wickedly, stroking her belly as if it were a war trophy. Are you threatening me, Theo? I asked, unable to believe what I was hearing. My own son, the reason for my existence for 32 years, was threatening me for money. It's not a threat, Mom. It's a reality. That money is going to be ours, whether you like it or not. That afternoon, after they left with the promise of returning the next day with the bank papers, I sat in my kitchen trying to process what had happened. The boy I had raised with so much love, the son for whom I had given up my own happiness, was blackmailing me. The daughter-in-law who had called me Mom with such affection was now screaming and threatening me. I took an old notebook from the kitchen drawer and started writing. Names, dates, conversations. Everything that had happened since I won the lottery. Every cruel word, every threat, every gesture of contempt. If they were going to play dirty, I also knew how to protect myself. At 69, I had learned that sometimes the only way to survive is to be smarter than your enemies. Tomorrow they're going to find out that their mother isn't the foolish old woman they think she is. I murmured as I wrote the last line in my notebook. The chamomile tea had gone cold, but my determination burned like fire in my chest. After they left yesterday with their threats, I sat in my kitchen until it got dark, trying to understand how I had reached this point. The silence of my house weighed on me like a tombstone. For the first time in 69 years, I felt completely alone in the world. I had no siblings, my parents had died years ago, and the few friends I had left lived far away or were too sick to help me. I got up and walked through the house, seeing every corner with new eyes. This house, which I had bought with my husband's life insurance, where I had raised Theo, where I had dreamed of growing old in peace, now felt like a prison. Every photograph of Theo on the walls looked at me as if accusing me of something. The smiling 5-year-old boy, the proud teenager at his graduation, the young man at his wedding with Megan. At what point had he become my enemy? I went to my bedroom and pulled a shoebox from the back of the closet. Inside, I kept all the receipts, bills, and important documents from the last few years. I started to go through them one by one, looking for patterns, looking for clues as to when this betrayal had really begun. And there it was, in black and white. the story of my own naivety. The hospital receipts from last year, when I had heart surgery. All the bills were in my name. I had paid for everything with my savings and my health insurance. But Theo had told everyone that he had paid for my operation. Megan had even bragged on Facebook that they had spent their savings to save my life. Lie after lie, building their image as sacrificial children. I kept looking and found more evidence of their deception. The electricity, water, and gas bills for the house, always paid by me, never by them. But whenever someone asked, Theo would say that he was supporting his elderly mother, the grocery bills, the medicines, even the minor repairs to the house, all paid with my pension and my small savings. I also found copies of the loans I had given them over the last 2 years. $3,000 when Theo lost his job the year before last. $5,000 when Megan needed fertility treatments. $2,000 for the down payment on their car. They had never paid me back a single cent. Every time I mentioned it, they would change the subject or make me feel guilty for asking my own family for money. But what hurt the most to find was the will I had made 3 years ago, when I was diagnosed with the heart condition. In it, I left everything to Theo and Megan, the house, my few savings, even my grandmother's jewelry. I had done it thinking that they would take care of me in my final years, that I would die surrounded by love. How foolish I had been. I sat on the bed with all those papers scattered around me and started connecting the dots. The increasingly infrequent visits, the constant excuses for not accompanying me to the doctor, the comments about how expensive life was, the hints about how big my house was for just one person. It had all been part of a plan to make me feel guilty, to soften me up, to prepare me for this moment. I remembered the conversation I had accidentally overheard 2 months ago, when they came to visit and thought I was asleep in my armchair. As soon as the old lady dies, we'll sell this house, and with that cash plus whatever she has saved, we can buy something better in the Heights, Megan had said. We just have to be patient. She can't last much longer, Theo had replied, laughing. That night I had pretended I hadn't heard anything, that I had been sound asleep. But their words had been seared into my memory like a branding iron. They were waiting for me to die to inherit my things. And now that I had won the lottery, they didn't want to wait anymore. They wanted the money now, while I was alive, so they could enjoy it. I got out of bed with a determination I hadn't felt in years. I went to the kitchen and took out my notebook where I had started to write down everything that had happened since I won the lottery. I wrote down every detail I could remember, the dates, the exact conversations, the witnesses who might have been present. If they were going to play dirty, I needed ammunition. I wrote about the first visit when they brought me the pre-prepared bank papers, as if it were a foregone conclusion that I would sign. I wrote about Megan's exact words when she screamed that I had already lived my life. I wrote about Theo's coldness when he told me it was my obligation to give them everything. And, of course, I wrote about the moment when Megan twisted my arm until it broke. Then I went to the living room and dialed the number of my neighbor, Sharon, the only person in the world who had shown me genuine affection in recent months. Sharon, I'm sorry to bother you so late, but I need to ask you a very big favor, I said when she answered the phone. Could you come over to my house for a moment? It's very important. Sharon arrived in less than 10 minutes, worried by my voice. She was a 50-year-old divorced woman who had moved into the house next door 6 months ago. We had developed a friendship based on afternoon cups of coffee and conversations about life. She had witnessed several of Theo and Megan's aggressive visits. Beatrice, what happened to your arm? She asked as soon as she saw the cast. I had made up an excuse about a fall when the neighbors asked, but with Sharon I decided to be honest. Megan broke it because I refused to give them all the money I won in the lottery, I said bluntly. Sharon froze. What do you mean she broke it? Your daughter-in-law hit you? She asked in disbelief. I told her everything, the threats, the screaming, the physical violence, the plan to force me to go to the bank the next day. Sharon listened with growing horror in her eyes. Beatrice, you have to call the police right now, she said, taking my good hand. This is domestic violence. They can't force you to give them your money by beating you. But I shook my head. No, Sharon, the police won't believe an old woman over her own son. Theo is very convincing when he wants to be. He'll say I fell, that I'm confused because of my age, that I'm making things up. Then what are you going to do? Sharon asked, with genuine concern in her voice. I looked her straight in the eye and said something I didn't even know I had in me. I'm going to be smarter than them. I'm going to let them think they've won, and then I'm going to teach them that you don't betray a mother without consequences. I explained my initial plan to Sharon. I needed her to be a witness to my current state, to accompany me to take photographs of my injuries, to be present when Theo and Megan came tomorrow. If something happens to me, if they hurt me more, or if I disappear, I want you to know exactly what's going on, I told her. Sharon agreed to help me without hesitation. We took pictures of my broken arm, the bruises Megan had left on my neck, the marks on my face where she had slapped me. This is evidence, Beatrice, she told me as she took the photos with her phone. Even if you don't go to the police now, these photos can be useful later. That night, after Sharon left, I stayed up making lists. A list of all the unpaid loans. A list of all the lies they had told about me. A list of all the times they had humiliated or despised me. But I also made another list, the list of my real resources. I had the winning ticket stored in my safe deposit box at the bank. I had the house in my name. I had my pension secured. I had some small savings in different accounts. And I had something they didn't expect. The experience of a woman who had survived 69 years of life, including the death of her husband, raising a son alone, and years of hard work. But above all, I had the clarity of someone who had finally seen the truth. Theo and Megan didn't love me. They had probably never loved me. They had only tolerated me as long as I was useful, as long as I gave them money, as long as I promised them an inheritance. Now that real money was at stake, they had shown their true colors. Tomorrow I'm going to act like the scared old woman they expect me to be, I said to myself as I prepared for another sleepless night. I'm going to let them think I've broken, that they're going to get what they want. But in the meantime, I'm going to make my moves in secret. And when they least expect it, they're going to find out they underestimated the wrong woman. For the first time in days, I smiled. It wasn't a smile of happiness, but of determination. It was the smile of a woman who had decided to fight for her dignity, no matter the cost. At 7 a.m, I was dressed and ready. I had been up all night, but my mind had never been clearer. I put on my best dress, the black one I wore for important occasions, and carefully applied makeup to hide the dark circles and bruises. I needed to look presentable for what was coming. I ate breakfast slowly, savoring each sip of coffee as if it were my last. At 8:30, the doorbell rang. It was Sharon who had come as we had agreed to witness everything that happened. "Are you sure about this, Beatrice?" she asked me one last time. "Completely sure," I replied with a calm that surprised even myself. At 9 o'clock, Theo and Megan arrived. They were elegantly dressed, as if they were going to a celebration instead of an extortion. Megan was wearing an expensive dress I had never seen on her, probably bought in anticipation of the money they were going to steal. Theo was carrying a leather briefcase and a fake smile that turned my stomach. "Good morning, Mom," Theo greeted me, kissing my cheek as if nothing had happened. "You're ready to go to the bank." Megan hugged me with that feigned sweetness I already knew. "Oh, Mama Beatrice, I'm so glad you came to your senses. You'll see, everything will turn out perfectly." "Yes, children, I understand now that you're right." I lied with the most submissive voice I could muster. "I'm too old to handle so much money. It's better if you take care of everything." I saw them exchange a look of complicity, believing they had won. Megan even smiled with the satisfaction of someone who believes they have broken their victim. On the way to the bank, Theo drove, whistling a cheerful song. Megan talked excitedly about their plans for the money. "First, we'll buy the house in Green Hills, then the business, then a new car for Theo." I listened in silence from the back seat, mentally recording every word to use later as evidence of their true intentions. When we arrived at the bank, Theo took some pre-prepared papers from his briefcase. They were documents for the complete transfer of the $4 million to his personal account. "You just have to sign here, Mom, and it's all settled," he said, pointing to the lines marked in yellow. "Can I read the papers before I sign?" I asked, feigning confusion. Megan immediately grew impatient. "Oh, Mom, they're just legal formalities. Theo has already reviewed everything. Just sign where it's marked." But I insisted on reading every line, taking my time, making them wait. I wanted the exact time I had planned to arrive. When the clock struck 10:30, I told the bank executive that I needed to speak with him in private before signing. I just have some questions about the process, I explained. Theo and Megan got nervous. Mom, there's nothing to discuss. Everything is in order, Theo insisted. Sir? I said to the executive, I need to verify something in my account before making any transfer. The employee politely agreed and escorted me to a private office. Theo and Megan were left in the waiting area, clearly anxious but unable to do anything to stop me. Once in the private office, I explained the real situation to the executive. These people are threatening and pressuring me to transfer all my money to them. Yesterday, my daughter-in-law fractured my arm because I refused. I showed him the cast and the photographs Sharon had taken the night before. The executive was horrified. Ma'am, this is very serious. Do you want us to call the police? I shook my head. Not yet. But I need to protect my money immediately. I want to make some preventive transfers before they suspect anything. In the next 20 minutes, we worked quickly. I transferred $3.5 million to a new account at another bank, an account that only I knew about. I left $500,000 in the original account so they wouldn't suspect anything immediately. I also activated all possible security alerts and set up a secret code for any future transactions. Furthermore, I told the executive, I want it registered in the system that any attempt to access my account by those people must be immediately reported to the police. I have evidence that they are extorting me. The executive took note of everything and assured me that my money was protected. When I returned to the waiting area, Theo and Megan looked at me expectantly. Everything okay, Mom? Theo asked, with poorly disguised impatience. Yes, son. I just wanted to make sure I understood the process, I replied with my best confused old lady act. We sat down again at the executive's desk. Theo placed the papers in front of me again. Well, Mom, now you can sign in peace, he said. I took the pen with a trembling hand, as if I were nervous. Megan watched me with eyes glittering with greed. Before I sign, I said to the executive, could you confirm the current balance of my account? The employee checked his computer and replied, $500,000, ma'am. The silence that followed was deafening. I watched as Theo's face slowly transformed from expectation to confusion. What do you mean, 500,000? Megan stammered. It's supposed to be 4 million. The executive checked his screen again. No, ma'am. In this account, there is $500,000. Perhaps the lady has the money distributed in different accounts. Theo looked at me, his eyes bloodshot. Mom, where is the rest of the money? I feigned confusion. I don't know what you're talking about, children. The gentleman says I have $500,000. That's what their island. Megan shot up from her chair like a spring. You moved the money, she screamed at me in the middle of the bank. You're deceiving us. Her scream drew the attention of other customers and employees. The executive immediately called for security. Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to calm down, or we will have to ask you to leave. Mom, Theo grabbed my good arm forcefully. Tell me right now where the rest of the money island. His grip was so tight it hurt, but I maintained my expression of innocent confusion. Theo, you're hurting me. I don't know what money you're talking about. The bank's security guard approached our table. Is there a problem here? The guard asked. Megan was hysterical. This old woman is robbing us. That money belongs to the family. She has no right to hide it. Her shouts echoed throughout the bank. Folks, the executive intervened. You're going to have to leave immediately, or we will call the police. Theo understood that they had lost control of the situation. He let go of my arm and tried to calm down. Fine, we're leaving. But this isn't over, Mom. As they gathered their useless papers, I remained seated, pretending to be scared and confused. Did I do something wrong? I asked the executive in a trembling voice. No, ma'am, you did nothing wrong. Your money is safe. Theo and Megan stormed out of the bank. I watched them through the window, arguing heatedly in the parking lot. Megan gestured furiously, and Theo ran his hands through his hair in desperation. They had arrived believing they would leave as millionaires and were leaving empty-handed. I waited 15 minutes before leaving the bank. When I reached the street, I took a taxi home. During the ride, I smiled for the first time in days. The first part of my plan had worked perfectly. Theo and Megan had shown their true colors in front of witnesses, and my money was safe. Now comes the hard part, I thought, as the taxi approached my house. Now comes the revenge. I got home before noon, knowing that Theo and Megan wouldn't be long. The failure at the bank had infuriated them, but it had also made them desperate. Desperate people make mistakes, and I was counting on that. I sat in my armchair to wait, with my phone within reach in case I needed to call Sharon or the police. I didn't have to wait long. At 1 p.m, I heard the engine of Theo's car screech to a halt outside. His footsteps in the yard sounded like hammer blows. This time they didn't knock. Theo used his copy of the key to get in, something he had asked for years ago for emergencies. "Mom, come out from wherever you are," he roared from the entrance. Megan followed, her heels hammering my floor as if she wanted to break it. When they saw me sitting calmly in my armchair, their faces contorted with rage. "Where is our money?" Megan screamed, planting herself in front of me with her arms akimbo. "What money, dear?" I replied with the same feigned innocence I had used at the bank. "My account has $500,000. The man at the bank confirmed it. Theo paced my living room like a caged lion, running his hands through his hair. "Don't take me for an idiot, Mom. You moved that money to another account." "Theo, I don't know how to do those computer and bank things," I lied sweetly. "If the money isn't there, maybe those hackers they talk about on the news stole it." Megan got so close to me I could smell her expensive perfume mixed with the sweat of her anger. "You lying old hag," she spat in my face. "We know you moved that money, and you're going to give it back right now." She was about to grab my fractured arm again, but I quickly got up from the armchair. "Megan, don't touch me. It already hurt a lot when you broke my arm." Theo stopped dead in his tracks. "What do you mean she broke your arm? You said you fell in the bathroom." I realized I had made a mistake by revealing the truth, but I decided to use it to my advantage. "Yes, I fell because Megan pushed me when I told her I wasn't going to sign the papers." "That's a lie," Megan shouted, but her red face betrayed her. Theo looked at her with a strange expression. For a moment, I thought my son might remember some humanity, that maybe he would realize what he was doing, but his response completely shattered my heart. "I don't care if she pushed you, Mom. You brought it on yourself for being stubborn," he said with a coldness that chilled my blood. "The only thing I care about is you telling us where you hid our money." In that moment, I knew I had lost my son forever. The boy I had raised was dead, and in his place was this cruel stranger. "If you don't tell us where the money is, we're going to make your life impossible," Megan threatened, approaching again. "We're going to come every day until you talk. We're going to make your last years a living hell until you give us what's ours." Her threat didn't scare me. On the contrary, it reassured me to know that I no longer had to pretend to love them. "Do whatever you want," I told them with a calmness that threw them off. "I don't have any more money than the $500,000 you saw at the bank." Theo approached me with his fists clenched. For a moment, I thought he was going to hit me, but he restrained himself. He knew the neighbors might hear. "Fine, Mom, we'll do this the hard way," he said through gritted teeth. "We're going to sue you for everything you owe us. The loans you never paid back, the money we spent taking care of you when you were sick, everything." He took his phone out of his pocket and started dialing. "I'm calling a lawyer right now." "Perfect," I replied, unfazed. "You can also call the police if you want. I have a lot of things to tell them about you." My calm was driving them crazy. They expected to find a scared old woman begging for forgiveness, not a serene woman who wouldn't be intimidated. Megan started rummaging through my house as if it were hers. She opened drawers, moved papers, looked for something that would give her clues about where I had hidden the money. "There has to be something here," she shouted as she threw my things on the floor. "No stupid old woman can be smart enough to hide $4 million. "Megan, stop touching my things," I said firmly. But she continued to destroy my living room, throwing books, moving furniture, looking for documents. Theo didn't stop her. On the contrary, he joined the search, going through my desk, opening private letters. That's when they found my notebook, where I had been writing down everything they had done to me. Theo read it aloud sarcastically. Megan screamed at me that I had already lived my life. Theo said it was my obligation to give them the money. Megan twisted my arm until it broke. He laughed as if it were a joke. "Look at this," Megan exclaimed, snatching the notebook from him. "The crazy old lady is writing lies about us. This is what she's going to use to poison the neighbors against us." She tore the notebook into pieces and threw them on the floor. They didn't know I had copies of everything saved at Sharon's house. "We're leaving now, Mom," Theo said, picking up the pieces of paper. "But we'll be back tomorrow, and the day after, and every day until you tell us the truth." They headed for the door, but before leaving, Megan turned to me with a malevolent smile. "Oh, and Beatrice, we forgot to tell you," Megan said with false sweetness. "We already posted pictures on Facebook telling the whole family that you won the lottery but are playing dumb so you don't have to share with anyone. Let's see if your little friends in the neighborhood still talk to you when they find out you're a stingy old woman." They left, leaving my house a mess, and me with a broken heart but with a clearer mind than ever. I picked up the pieces of my notebook from the floor and put them in a bag. Even torn, it was still evidence of their intentions. Then I sat down to think about the next step of my plan. I took out my phone and checked Facebook for the first time in months. Sure enough, Megan had posted a picture of me with a caption that read, "My mother-in-law won $4 million in the lottery but is playing dumb to avoid helping her family. She'd rather be selfish than see her grandchild grow up in a good house. Some people change when they have money." The post had dozens of comments from distant relatives and acquaintances criticizing me, calling me selfish, saying a grandmother should think of her family first. Megan had achieved what she wanted, to make me the villain of the story in everyone's eyes. But I no longer cared what people thought. I had lived 69 years trying to please others, to be the perfect mother, the ideal daughter-in-law, the kind neighbor, and it had led me to be alone, hurt, and betrayed by the people I loved most. "Let them think what they want," I murmured, closing the phone. "Soon, they'll know who's telling the truth and who's lying." It was time to move on to the second phase of my plan. That afternoon, I dialed the number I had saved in my address book 3 years ago, when I made my will. Attorney Benjamin Romero, a professional voice, answered. "Mr. Romero, this is Beatrice Herrera. I need to see you urgently. It's about a case of family extortion." We scheduled an appointment for 9 o'clock the next morning. Throughout the night, I prepared my evidence. The photographs of my injuries that Sharon had taken, the torn pieces of my notebook with the annotations, the receipts for all the loans they had never repaid, the copies of the lies they had published on social media. All meticulously organized in a folder. Mr. Romero received me in his office with the seriousness the case deserved. When I showed him the photographs of my fractured arm and explained how it had happened, his expression hardened. "Mrs. Herrera, this is aggravated domestic violence. We have solid grounds to proceed legally against your daughter-in-law." "Mr. Romero, I don't want to put anyone in jail," I explained. "I just want to protect my money and be left in peace. But I also want them to face the consequences of what they've done." The lawyer nodded understandingly. "I understand perfectly. We will use the evidence as a shield, not necessarily as a sword." I signed several documents that day. A formal complaint for assault and extortion that would be filed away but ready to be used if necessary. A temporary restraining order prohibiting them from coming near me or my property. And most importantly, a new will where I completely revoked Theo and Megan's inheritance. "Mr. Romero, I want my entire estate to go to charity when I die," I said, signing the final document. "To organizations that help elderly people abandoned by their families." Benjamin looked at me with respect. "You are a very brave woman, Mrs. Herrera. Your son doesn't know what a gem of a mother he is losing." The next step was to visit the bank where I had transferred the $3.5 million. I needed to establish a trust that would protect my money from any future attempts at theft or manipulation. "I want that when I die, this money is automatically donated to nursing homes in the city," I explained to the manager. "Ma'am, are you sure?" the banker asked. "It's a considerable sum. Do you not have family who could benefit?" I showed him the photographs of my injuries. "My family has already shown what kind of benefit they seek from me. I prefer my money to help people who really need it." I returned home feeling lighter than I had in years. For the first time since winning the lottery, I was in complete control of the situation. My money was protected, I had legal backing, and Theo and Megan could no longer intimidate me. Now, I just had to wait for them to get themselves into bigger trouble. I didn't have to wait long. The next day, Theo arrived at my house with two men I didn't recognize. One of them was carrying a briefcase and looked like a lawyer. The other seemed to be some kind of private investigator. I watched them from my window before deciding whether to open the door. When they knocked, I opened it with the chain on. "Good morning, Mom." Theo greeted me with false courtesy. "I've brought attorney Michael Torres, my lawyer. He's going to explain the legal rights that Megan and I have to your money as direct family." The supposed lawyer smiled at me with the confidence of someone who thinks they are going to scare an ignorant old woman. "Good morning, ma'am," the man said. "I'm here to inform you that, according to the laws of anticipated inheritance, you have a legal obligation to share your earnings with your direct heirs. Your son and daughter-in-law are entitled to receive 80% of what you won in the lottery." I remained silent for a moment, pretending to be scared by his words. "Is that true?" I asked in a trembling voice. "I have to give them my money even if I don't want to." The fake lawyer nodded solemnly. "That's right, ma'am. It's the law. If you don't comply voluntarily, we can compel you through the courts." "Well," I replied, sighing, "if it's the law, then I have no other choice. Please, come in so we can discuss the details." I took off the chain and opened the door completely. Theo smiled triumphantly, believing he had finally broken my resistance. They settled in my living room while I made coffee in the kitchen. From there I could hear them celebrating in low voices. "I told you the old woman would give in as soon as we brought a lawyer," Theo whispered. "These ignorant old ladies get scared by any legal word," the supposed lawyer replied. I returned with the coffee tray and sat down opposite them with my best expression of a defeated old woman. "Well, Mr. Torres, what papers do I have to sign?" I asked with feigned resignation. The man took some very official-looking documents from his briefcase. "Ma'am, these are the mandatory transfer documents," he explained, showing me the sheets. "By signing them, you comply with the law and avoid major problems with the justice system." I took the papers and began to read them carefully, feigning confusion with the legal terms. "Excuse me, Mr. Torres," I said after a few minutes, "but these papers don't have the court seal. Shouldn't they have some kind of official validation?" I saw the man get nervous. Yes, of course, but that's added later, when we present them before the judge." "And what is your bar association number?" I continued, asking innocently. "I'd like to write it down for my records." The supposed lawyer started to stammer. "It's just, I don't have it with me right now." Theo looked at him worriedly, realizing something was going wrong. I got up from the armchair slowly and went to my desk. "Let me call my own lawyer to confirm that everything is in order," I said, taking out my phone. "I want to make sure I'm complying with the law correctly." The look of panic on the fake lawyer's face confirmed what I already knew. I dialed Mr. Benjamin Romero's number and put it on speakerphone so everyone could hear. "Mr. Romero, can you confirm if there is any law of anticipated inheritance that obliges lottery winners to share with their family?" His response was clear and forceful. "Mrs. Herrera, no such law exists. No one can force you to give your money to anyone." The silence in my living room was deafening. The fake lawyer quickly gathered his papers and headed for the door. "I think there's been a misunderstanding. I'll come back another time when I have all my documents in order." He left almost at a run, leaving Theo and the investigator standing in my living room. "Theo," I said to my son with a calmness that threw him off, "you just committed a crime. Trying to scam me with false documents and a non-existent lawyer is aggravated fraud." His face fell when he understood he had walked into a trap. "Mom, I didn't know the lawyer was fake," he stammered, trying to defend himself. "Megan found him online. We thought he was real, but I had heard enough lies." "Theo, get out of my house right now and tell Megan that if you bother me again, I will use all the evidence I have against you." They left without another word, but I knew this wasn't over. They had shown they were willing to go to any extreme to steal my money. It was time for them to face the real consequences of their actions. That afternoon, I called Mr. Romero again. "Mr. Romero, it's time to activate the complaint. I now have enough evidence of their attempts at fraud and extortion." My war had officially begun. Early the next day, 2 police officers knocked on my door. They came to deliver the restraining order that Mr. Romero had arranged. Mrs. Ana Herrera, this order prohibits your son Theo Herrera and your daughter-in-law Megan Reyes from coming within 200 yards of you or your property, the younger officer explained. If they violate this order, they will be arrested immediately. 2 hours after the police left, my phone began to ring non-stop. It was Theo, calling again and again from different numbers. I didn't answer any of the calls, but I did record all the voicemails he left me. Mom, answer the phone. We can work this out without lawyers or police. I don't understand why you're making this so complicated. We're family. His messages became more desperate and aggressive with each call. Mom, this is a betrayal. After everything I did for you, you repay me with a restraining order. Cancel that piece of crap right now, or I swear you'll regret it. Each message was new evidence I could use against him if necessary. In the afternoon, Sharon came to visit me with news. Beatrice, you're not going to believe what's happening in the neighborhood, she said, sitting in my kitchen with a cup of tea. Megan is going around telling everyone that you've gone crazy, that you sued them for no reason, that you're accusing them of things that never happened. I smiled bitterly. It was exactly what I had expected. But that's not all, Sharon continued. I went to the supermarket this morning and ran into Mrs. Andrews, the neighbor from the corner. She told me that Theo and Megan came to her house last night, asking if she knew anything about your bank accounts or if you had mentioned where you had hidden the money. My stomach tied itself in a knot. They were investigating my neighbors, trying to find clues about my money. What did you tell Mrs. Andrews? I asked worriedly. I told her I didn't know anything, but I recommended she not get involved in these family problems, Sharon replied. But I'm worried, Beatrice. Those two are desperate. I don't know how far they're capable of going. That same afternoon, I found out just how far they were capable of going. I was watering my plants in the front yard when I saw an unfamiliar car parked across from my house. Inside was a man with a camera who was taking pictures of me. When he saw me watching him, he started the engine and drove off quickly. Theo and Megan had hired a private detective to watch me. Over the next few days, the surveillance intensified. Different cars, different people, but always someone watching my movements. They photographed me when I went out to get groceries, when I went to the bank, when I visited the doctor to check on my fractured arm. It was a systematic campaign of harassment designed to intimidate and pressure me. But what bothered me most was when I discovered they had contacted my doctor, the employee at the bank where I had my original account, even the young man who delivered my gas. Megan had introduced herself as my concerned daughter-in-law, telling them that I was showing signs of senile dementia and that the family was trying to protect me from making dangerous financial decisions. Mrs. Herrera, Dr. Evans, my primary care physician, called me on the phone. Your daughter-in-law came to my office yesterday asking about your mental state. She told me you're giving away money to strangers and that she's afraid someone is taking advantage of you. His call confirmed that Theo and Megan were trying to build a case to declare me mentally incompetent. Doctor, I am perfectly fine in my faculties, I replied firmly. My daughter-in-law and my son are harassing me because I refuse to give them all the money I won in the lottery. They are the ones causing me problems, not the other way around. I briefly explained the situation, and the doctor was quiet for a moment. Mrs. Herrera, would you like me to schedule a full psychological evaluation? The doctor offered. That way, we will have it officially documented that you are in full command of your mental faculties. I agreed immediately. It was exactly what I needed to protect myself from their attempts to have me declared incompetent. Meanwhile, Megan's posts on social media became more vicious every day. She no longer just accused me of being selfish with the money. Now she was inventing stories about my supposed dementia, about how I had become paranoid and aggressive, about how I had threatened my own family. Each post had dozens of comments from distant relatives expressing their concern for my mental state. My poor mother-in-law hasn't been the same since she won the lottery, Megan wrote in a post that included a picture of me taken without my permission. The money changed her completely. Now she distrusts everyone, even her own family. It's so sad to see how greed can destroy an older person. The comments were devastating to my reputation. But the final straw came when Megan posted a video of herself crying, stroking her pregnant belly. I'm so worried about my baby, she said through fake sobs. The stress of dealing with my mother-in-law's situation is affecting me a lot. I don't understand why a grandmother would choose money over the well-being of her future grandchild. We're only asking for help to give this baby a good life, but she sees us as enemies. The video went viral in our social circle. Family, friends, neighbors, even people I barely knew started contacting me to express their concern. Some suggested I seek psychological help. Others told me directly that I was being cruel to my son and daughter-in-law. It was a perfectly orchestrated smear campaign. It was then that Mr. Romero called me with alarming news. Mrs. Herrera, Theo, and Megan have just filed a civil lawsuit against you. They are accusing you of defamation and slander, and they are asking a judge to declare you mentally incompetent to manage your finances. My heart raced. They had taken the fight to the legal arena. What does that mean, Mr. Romero? I asked, trying to stay calm. It means we have to appear before a judge in 2 weeks to defend your mental competence and your right to manage your own money, he explained. But don't worry. We have solid evidence that you are perfectly sane, and we have evidence of violence and extortion against them. I couldn't sleep that night. For the first time since this war had begun, I felt real fear. Not fear of losing the money, but fear of losing my freedom. If a judge decided I was not mentally competent, they could place me under Theo's guardianship. He would have total control over my life, my money, my decisions. I would be his legal prisoner. The next day, I went to the bank where I had the $3.5 million stored. I want to make a change to the trust's instructions, I told the manager. If something happens to me, if I'm declared incompetent, or if I die under suspicious circumstances, I want all the money to be immediately donated and the reason for the donation to be made public. Ma'am, are you in danger? The manager asked, concerned. I showed him Megan's social media posts, the lawsuit documents they had filed against me, the evidence of the harassment I was suffering. I want to make sure that even if something happens to me, the truth comes out. That same day, I decided to take an action that I knew would make them desperate, but would also expose them completely. I called the local newspaper and asked to speak with a reporter. I want to tell you the story of an old woman who won the lottery and is now being harassed by her own family, I told the journalist who took my call. The interview was published 2 days later on the front page of the newspaper. 4 million and her family threatens her, the headline read. The article included photographs of my fractured arm, copies of Megan's defamatory posts, and my full testimony about the violence and harassment I had suffered. The reaction was immediate and explosive. My home phone didn't stop ringing all day. Television reporters knocked on my door. Neighbors who had believed Megan's lies came to apologize to me. But most importantly, several elderly rights organizations contacted me to offer free legal support. A national television show that specialized in cases of family abuse also called. Mrs. Herrera, we want to invite you to tell your story on national television, the producer told me. Your case can help other older people who are going through similar situations. I accepted immediately. But it was Theo and Megan's reaction that mattered most to me. That same night, violating the restraining order, they showed up at my house screaming like maniacs. Mom, how could you do this to us? Theo roared, banging on my door. Now everyone thinks we're monsters. We're getting fired from our jobs because of your damn article. You damn old hag, Megan screamed from the yard. You ruined our lives. No one will hire us now. My baby is going to be born into poverty because of you. Their screams woke up all the neighbors, who came out to see what was happening. Some even took out their phones to record. I immediately called the police. They are violating the restraining order, I reported. They are on my property shouting threats. The officers arrived in less than 10 minutes and arrested Theo and Megan in front of all the neighbors. The images of the arrest were recorded by several witnesses and the next day were circulating all over social media. As they were being taken away in handcuffs, Theo shouted one last threat at me that was heard throughout the neighborhood. This isn't over, Mom. We're going to take everything from you. You're going to end up in a nursing home without $1. His words were recorded by the reporters who had arrived following the story and appeared that same night on the television news. For the first time in weeks, I slept soundly that night. Theo and Megan had shown their true colors to the whole world. They could no longer pretend to be the victims of a crazy old woman. Now everyone knew who they really were. The next day, Mr. Romero called me with excellent news. Mrs. Herrera, after what happened last night, Theo and Megan's lawyer withdrew the lawsuit. Apparently, they no longer want this case to go to court. I smiled as I hung up the phone. They had lost their war. 3 months after the arrest, my life had found a tranquility I hadn't known for years. Theo and Megan had kept their promise not to bother me again, but not out of love or respect, but because they no longer had a choice. The media scandal had completely destroyed their reputation. Theo had lost his job at the auto parts company when his boss saw the news about his arrest. Megan had been fired from the boutique where she worked because customers refused to be served by the woman who beat up old ladies. But beyond the professional consequences, what had hit them hardest was the social rejection. Their friends had abandoned them when the truth came out. The neighbors pointed at them in the street. Even some distant relatives had posted comments on social media expressing their shame over the couple's behavior. The smear campaign that Megan had orchestrated against me had completely backfired on her. I found out from Sharon that they had to move out of their apartment because the neighbors had made them feel so uncomfortable that they could no longer live there peacefully. They say they went to live with Megan's mother in a neighborhood on the other side of the city. My neighbor told me as we drank coffee in my renovated kitchen. It seems Megan's father kicked them out of the house when he found out what they had done. I had used part of my money to completely remodel my house, not because I needed to, but because I wanted to erase any trace of the toxic presence that Theo and Megan had left in my home. I painted the walls cheerful colors, replaced the furniture where they had sat to threaten me, and bought new plants to fill my garden with life. It was like a symbolic purification of my personal space. With the $500,000 I had left in the original account, I decided to make some smart investments. I bought a small apartment in a quiet area of the city that I rented to a young, hard-working family. The rental income gave me additional financial security and provided me with the satisfaction of helping honest people who really needed a home. I also allocated $100,000 to create a fund to help elderly victims of family abuse, managed by the human rights organization that had supported me during my legal process. Your case has inspired many older people to report the abuse they suffer in their families, the organization's director told me during the donation ceremony. Your courage is saving lives. The national television program where I had told my story became one of the most watched episodes of the season. I received hundreds of letters from people who had lived through similar situations. Elderly people who had been manipulated or mistreated by their own children. Each letter confirmed that I had made the right decision by making my story public. One of the letters that moved me the most was from a 72-year-old woman from Chicago, Mrs. Herrera. After watching your program, I had the courage to report my son, who was stealing my pension and threatening to put me in a nursing home if I didn't give him all my money. Thanks to your example, I am now free and at peace. God bless you for your strength. Those words were worth more than all the millions in the world. 6 months after the scandal, I ran into Megan at the supermarket. It was inevitable. She was in the checkout line when I arrived with my cart. Her pregnancy was very advanced, but she looked gaunt, tired, very different from the haughty woman I had known. When she saw me, she immediately lowered her head as if wanting to become invisible. For a moment, I felt a pang of something that might have been pity, but I quickly remembered the sound of my arm breaking in her hands and the feeling disappeared. Megan, I greeted her in a neutral voice, without hostility but without warmth. She slowly looked up, her eyes full of a shame that seemed genuine. Mrs. Herrera, she murmured almost inaudibly. I wanted to apologize for everything that happened. Her voice trembled and she looked like she was about to cry. I have no excuse for what I did. I was desperate, but that doesn't justify hurting you. I looked at her for a long moment, studying her face to see if it was another one of her performances. Megan, I finally replied, an apology doesn't bring back broken trust or erase the pain caused, but I appreciate that you at least acknowledge what you did. I paid for my groceries and headed for the exit. Before I left, I turned back one last time. I hope that when your son is born, you learn what the unconditional love of a mother truly means. That night, as I watered my plants in the garden, I reflected on that encounter. I didn't feel satisfaction at seeing Megan defeated, but I didn't feel sorry for her either. There was justice in her facing the consequences of her actions. Her son would grow up knowing the truth about what his parents had done, and maybe that would make him a better person. Theo never tried to contact me directly after the arrest, but I knew from third parties that he had fallen into a deep depression. According to a distant cousin who took pity on him, he would spend entire days without getting out of bed, obsessively talking about how he had lost millions of dollars because of his selfish mother. He hadn't learned anything. He still saw himself as the victim of the story. A year after winning the lottery, I moved to a smaller but more comfortable house in a quiet neighborhood near the city center. Not because my previous house was bad, but because I wanted a completely new start. This new house had a perfect garden for my plants, a kitchen with lots of natural light, and most importantly, no painful memories within its walls. Sharon moved to the same area a few weeks after me. We had developed a solid friendship based on mutual respect and understanding. We had breakfast together on Sundays, went to the flower market on Wednesdays, and in the afternoons, we drank tea while watching soap operas. It was the family I had chosen, not the one I was given by blood. In my new house, I established a routine that filled me with peace. I woke up early to water my plants and make my coffee. I read the newspaper on my terrace while listening to the birds sing. In the afternoons, I visited the senior center where I now worked as a volunteer, helping other older adults write letters or simply listening to their stories. One afternoon, while organizing photographs in my new living room, I found a picture of Theo when he was 5 years old. He was smiling with that pure innocence that children have, hugging a stuffed animal that I had given him for his birthday. For a moment, my heart ached, remembering the sweet boy he had been before he became the cruel man he was now. But I didn't feel regret for my decisions. That boy had died a long time ago, replaced by a stranger who had chosen greed over love. I had raised the boy with all my heart, but I was not responsible for the decisions the adult had made. I put the photograph in a box, along with other memories of the past that no longer had a place in my present. 2 years after the lottery, I received an unexpected call. It was a social worker informing me that Megan had given birth to a baby girl, but that both she and Theo had been arrested for drug trafficking. The baby was in the custody of the state, and they needed to contact relatives to evaluate care options. Mrs. Herrera, according to our records, you are the child's paternal grandmother, the social worker explained. Would you be willing to consider taking temporary custody of the child while we resolve the parents' legal situation? The question hit me like a lightning bolt. An innocent baby, my granddaughter, with no fault for her parents' mistakes. I couldn't sleep that night, struggling with the most difficult decision of my life. On one hand, the child was my blood, my only real remaining family. On the other hand, agreeing to care for her would mean reconnecting with Theo and Megan in some way. After much reflection, I made a decision that surprised even myself. The next day, I called the social worker. I accept to take care of the child, I told her, but under my conditions. I want full and permanent custody. If Theo and Megan get out of prison, I don't want them to have any rights to the baby until they prove they are completely rehabilitated. It was my chance to break the cycle of toxicity in my family. The baby, whom I named Hope, came to my house when she was 3 months old. She was beautiful, with the big eyes of the Herrera family, but with a sweetness that neither of her parents had. From the moment I held her in my arms, I knew I had made the right decision. This baby would grow up surrounded by real love, not manipulation or blackmail. I used part of my money to turn one of the rooms into a perfect nursery for Hope. I hired a trusted nanny to help me during the day, as at my 71 years, I needed support to care for a baby. But the nights were just ours, when I would feed her a bottle while singing the same lullabies I had sung to her father decades ago. Hope gave me back something I thought was lost forever, the joy of being needed for the right reasons. She didn't need me for my money or for what I could give her materially. She needed me for love, for care, for the security that only a grandmother can provide. It was a pure love, with no hidden agenda or selfish motivations. One afternoon, while Hope slept in my lap and I rocked in the chair in my flower-filled garden, I reflected on the strange path my life had taken. I had lost a son, but gained a granddaughter. I had lost money, but gained peace. I had lost the family I thought I had, but found the family I truly deserved. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was Mr. Romero with news about Theo and Megan. Mrs. Herrera, he was sentenced to 5 years in prison. Theo wants to talk to you. He says he wants to apologize and ask you to visit him in jail. I looked at Hope sleeping peacefully in my arms, and my answer was immediate. Mr. Romero, tell him that when he gets out of prison, if he has truly changed, if he has learned what love and respect mean, then we can talk about meeting his daughter, but not before. This child is not going to grow up visiting prisons or knowing parents who don't know how to love her. It was my final decision on the matter. That night, after putting Hope to bed in her crib, I sat in my kitchen with a cup of chamomile tea. The house was silent, but it was a silence full of peace, not loneliness. For the first time in years, I was not afraid of the future. I had a clear purpose: to raise this child to be strong, independent, and capable of recognizing true love from false. The $4 million I had won in the lottery had cost me a son, but it had given me something much more valuable: the freedom to live without fear, the dignity to make my own decisions, and the opportunity to create a new family based on real love. Hope would grow up knowing that money doesn't buy happiness, but that honesty and self-respect are priceless. I closed my eyes and smiled, feeling for the first time in a long time that I had won the most important lottery of all, the lottery of inner peace. My war was over, and I had emerged victorious not by destroying my enemies, but by building a new life full of purpose and genuine love. "Good night, Hope," I murmured, directing my words to the room where my granddaughter slept. "Tomorrow will be a beautiful day for us." And for the first time in years, I really believed it.